Hello everyone. Today I want to share a story about my life. My name is Emma and I am 29 years old. This story is about love, trust, heartbreak, and how I found myself again. I believe my story will teach you something important about relationships and life. This is not just any story. This is my life. It's about how I met the love of my life, how we built a beautiful relationship, and how everything changed when I discovered the truth. But most importantly, it's about how I learned to heal, move forward, and become stronger. So let's begin. In the beginning, I still remember the day I met Ryan. It was 6 years ago. I was working at a bookstore in San Francisco. I loved books and that small store was my second home. One rainy afternoon, Ryan walked in. He was tall, had dark brown hair, and his smile was warm and inviting. I was arranging books on the shelf when he asked, "Can you recommend a good book?" His voice was deep and his eyes held a kindness that made me feel comfortable instantly. I handed him a novel and said, "This is one of my favorites." He smiled. "Then I'll take it." From that day, Ryan started visiting the bookstore often. Sometimes he bought books, sometimes he just sat and read. But every time he came, he talked to me. Slowly, our conversations became longer. One evening, he finally asked, "Emma, would you like to have dinner with me?" I hesitated for a moment, then nodded. I'd love to. That dinner was the beginning of something beautiful. Over plates of pasta and glasses of wine, we talked for hours. He told me he was a photographer and loved traveling. I told him about my dream of opening my own bookstore one day. He listened, truly listened, and that made me feel special. For the next 3 years, we were inseparable. He surprised me with my favorite coffee on cold mornings, left little love notes in my books, and made me feel like the most important person in his life. We traveled together, watched sunsets on the beach, and laughed until our stomachs hurt. Then one day, he took me to the top of a hill where we often went for walks. As the wind blew through my hair, he got down on one knee, pulled out a ring, and said, "Emma, I can't imagine my life without you. Will you marry me?" Tears filled my eyes, and I said, "Yes." It was the happiest moment of my life. We got married 6 months later. It was a small ceremony with close friends and family. I wore a simple white gown, and Ryan looked handsome in a navy blue suit. As we exchanged vows, he held my hands tightly and whispered, "I will love you forever." For the first 2 years, our marriage was everything I had ever dreamed of. We moved into a cozy apartment and decorated it together. He took pictures of me when I wasn't looking, and I wrote little love letters that I hid in his backpack. We cooked together, danced in our living room, and shared our dreams about the future. I trusted him completely. But life doesn't always go the way we plan. Slowly, things started to change. At first, it was small things. Ryan started coming home later than usual. When I asked, he would say, "Work was hectic today." Our conversations became shorter. He was always on his phone, smiling at messages that weren't from me. One night, I asked him, "Ryan, is something wrong?" He sighed, "No, Emma, I'm just tired. Work is stressful." I believed him. Why wouldn't I? He was my husband. But the late nights became more frequent. The love notes stopped. The surprise coffee never came. Then one day, I found a receipt in his jacket pocket. A dinner receipt from a fancy restaurant. The date on it, last Thursday, the night he said he was working late. My heart pounded in my chest. Maybe it was a business dinner, I told myself. Maybe I was overthinking. But deep down, I knew. A few weeks later, I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of his phone vibrating. He was asleep beside me. Curious, I picked up the phone to silence it. The screen lit up. "Miss you already. Can't wait to see you again." I stared at the message, my hands shaking. My mind raced. Who was she? The next morning, I couldn't hold it in anymore. Over breakfast, I asked him, "Ryan, are you seeing someone else?" He looked up, surprised. What? No, Emma, why would you ask that? I pulled out the receipt and placed it on the table. Explain this. His face turned pale. He hesitated before saying, "It's nothing. Just a dinner with a friend." "Which friend?" I asked, my voice breaking. He didn't answer. That silence told me everything. After a long pause, he finally admitted it. "Her name is Sophie. She works with me." I never meant for this to happen. The tears filled my eyes. How long? 6 months. 6 months. For 6 months, the man I loved, the man I trusted, had been lying to me. The days that followed were the hardest of my life. I couldn't eat. I couldn't sleep. Every corner of our home reminded me of him, of us. One evening, as I sat alone in the dark, I realized I had 2 choices. I could let this pain destroy me, or I could rebuild myself. I chose to rebuild. The first thing I did was remove all reminders of him, the photos, the gifts, the memories. I packed them away. Then I asked myself, what does Emma want? I started journaling my thoughts every morning. Writing became my therapy. I took long walks in the park, reclaiming spaces that once belonged to us. One day, I saw a little boy learning to ride a bicycle. He fell, but got up and tried again. Watching him, I thought, if he can keep going, so can I? I joined a painting class. I had always loved art, but never had time for it. Pouring my emotions onto the canvas helped me heal. Most importantly, I forgave Ryan, not for him, but for me. Holding on to anger only hurt me more. A year later, I took a solo trip to Greece. Standing by the ocean, watching the waves crash against the shore, I felt free. I had survived. I had grown. And I had learned the most important lesson of all. I don't need someone else to complete me. I am already whole.